the Prime Minister, the Home Minister there, with the army generals all parked in Delhi, was an unbelievable event. We all know that. We're not here to go into that again. But why do we talk of 84? Even though it's something that has happened now so long ago, why do we talk of 84? We talk of 84 because the wounds of 1984 have not healed. Every time we see a policeman decorated for killing people, getting promotions for killing people, our wounds open up. Every time we see the accused who ought to be behind bars walk free, our wounds open up. Every time we see criminals who were killers and who organized killing become ministers in the present government, our wounds open up. Every time we see KPS Gill being lauded, being applauded for having solved the problems of the Punjab, our wounds open up. I went to the NHRC in Khalra Saab's case. Khalra Saab took his case to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court directed the NHRC to investigate and award compensation. You won't believe it, in the NHRC, the stand of the government was that these persons who died in police custody. Government counsel said, yes, they were in our custody when they died. In cross-examination, I asked, how did they die if they were in your custody? The answer was, they were enemy agents. We took them with us to discover the hideouts of the terrorists, and in the crossfire they died. Just think about that answer. It is the clearest admission of the use of under trials, people against whom there's a charge, but there's not a proven charge. They've not been convicted. It's the clearest admission of the use of under trials as a human shield. It's a war crime. We say genocide, mass elimination of a community, state-sponsored. It's a war crime. That you should take a person and use him as a human shield is a war crime. And the National Human Rights Commission gave us compensation of $5,000 for killing in custody. $5,000 per person. Our wounds open up. And that case, my dear friends, is now in the Supreme Court. Paramjit Kaur has taken that case to the Supreme Court, where we challenge the compensation given to us as being insulting to our community and to the people who died. The riot cases are also going on, but many of those persons who are guilty have now escaped. Evidence against them has been compromised. But one person, Sajjan Kumar, will go behind bars, I can tell you that. I've been following that case closely, and Fulka Saab, whom you know very well, is arguing that case magnificently in the trial court and in the High Court and the Supreme Court. The eyewitnesses against Sajjan Kumar have spoken clearly in court. They have not been compromised, and they have stood up despite threats given to them. And Sajjan Kumar will go behind bars, but he was just one of the hundreds who should have gone behind bars. The criminal justice system, when it came to the prosecution of persons who engaged in such a massacre, that criminal justice system failed us. And the reason why we talk of 1984 is not because we want to open up the old wounds and think about the past, but because there's a very important lesson for us today in contemporary India. And there's a very important lesson not just for the Sikh community, but for the Muslims and the Christian and for all Indians. If in 1984 the criminal justice system had worked, if the prosecution had happened, if those politicians had gone behind bars and those policemen who were complicit in the killings had gone behind bars, would the riots of 1992 have happened? In 1992, remember, 3,000 Muslims were killed on the streets of Bombay. In 2002, 3,500 Muslims were killed on the streets of Ahmedabad and Baroda in Gujarat. And in 2007, 150 Christians were killed in Kandhamal in Orissa. What is this thing about India, which is supposed to be a non-violent spiritual country? What is this thing that allows you to kill people, massacre them en masse? You shoot a man in his head, you go to jail, but you massacre 1,000 people with police support and political support and you run free? What is this? And 84 is important because it tells us that we have to change our system so that it never happens, that a killing can take place or a massacre can take place or a riot can take place, and the criminal justice system will not work. Because the law enforcers are the lawbreakers. Those who are supposed to prosecute are the persons running riot and doing the killing. It's an important lesson for the whole of India today. Manmohan Singh, I am told, has said, when he came to Canada, that the Sikhs should move on and that they should forget the past. Perhaps if Manmohan Singh took his job seriously and our Home Department took their job seriously and prosecuted people, even now, it's not too late, our wounds would heal and we would move on and we would forget the past. But as long as justice is not done to the Sikh community, as long as the persons are not prosecuted, there will never be peace. Generation after generation will remember the suffering and pain and anguish of the people. And they will remember doubly that no one was punished, that justice was not done. We talk of 1984 for yet another reason: stigma. In 1984, the state refined its technique of attacking you and then stigmatizing the victim. The Sikhs were called separatists, terrorists. In Bombay, the Muslims were called terrorists. You massacre 3,000 Muslims on the streets of Bombay and then you turn around and say they're terrorists. In Manipur today, killing after killing in the northeast, unbelievable killing, using the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which gives the security forces the right to kill on suspicion. Hundreds of people killed, and the Manipuris stigmatized as separatists and insurgents. In Kashmir, decades of suffering, decades of killing, unbelievable suffering, not a single home without a boy, without a girl, without a father, without an uncle being killed. Unbelievable suffering. Killing after killing after killing. Not a single officer punished. Not a single person taken to task. And today when the Kashmiris say Azadi, freedom, we want freedom from this oppression, they are stigmatized as separatists. And in Chhattisgarh, all human rights activists, where the corporations go in to do mining, all human rights activists, stigmatized and characterized as Naxal sympathizers. You know the case of Binayak Sen. He was a doctor working in the remote areas of Chhattisgarh. He was working among the tribals. His crime was that when he went into jail to treat a particular person who was a Naxalite, he went into jail to treat him. They filed a case against him saying that he had taken a letter from that person and he gave that letter to somebody else. That letter said nothing. When it turned up in court, that letter said nothing. And yet Binayak Sen, India's foremost doctor working among the poor, recognized internationally, spent 3 years in jail and is now out on bail. A case of sedition and waging war against the state was filed against him. Binayak Sen, who came on television 100 times saying, I do not believe in violence, like all of us do. We do not believe in violence. We do not promote violence. We do not encourage violence. We do not tolerate violence. The World Sikh Organization, I've had discussion with you. You make it very clear that violence is not our creed. We want to move by democratic means. We want to use legal avenues for the solution of our problems. Binayak Sen said that 100 times. And the charge against Binayak Sen was waging war against the state and sedition. So stigmatizing, you stigmatize. And I must tell you in the Sikh community that sometimes you feel that you've been stigmatized and things have been said about you that are so untrue and unjust that politicians and others should never have used that language against our community. But it's not true of you alone today. We stand with you. The whole of India stands with you. All those right across the country, from the northeast to Kashmir, right down to the south of India, all those who have fought for human rights and democratic rights, who have spoken out fearlessly against government, who have not allowed themselves to be intimidated by the security forces, who have stood up despite repression, all of them on television and elsewhere, all of them have been stigmatized. I've been told 100 times on television debates, 100 times, you're human rights activists, you are silent when it comes to terrorism. Your human rights activists are the front face of terrorism. All of us. So right across the country, my dear friends, we remember that all those who fight against injustice, all of us, it's been a strategy of the Indian state to stigmatize them in some way or the other. I must tell you also of Buller's case, because many of you have been following Mr. Buller's death sentence now. And there's been an unfortunate turn in the Supreme Court, and there's been some unhappy developments in the Supreme Court. But Buller has been sentenced to death. And I must draw your attention, it was a 3-judge bench decision of the Supreme Court in Buller's case. I must draw your attention